often it's the lack of freedom. It's a feeling of feeling trapped. So it's like, what's really important, I think, for anyone is that they feel really aligned with their work. I think that's where joy and happiness come from. One of the reasons that was a real driver for me when I left corporate to set up as an entrepreneur was then I wanted to build them a legacy. I know I'm motivated by freedom and autonomy. You don't really get that in corporate.
No.
And I wanted to demonstrate to them that they could really do whatever they wanted to do.
Lots of people want to give advice.
Yeah.
And very much in our group, it's stop. We're not here for advice, which is essentially from opinion. You're only allowed to share from experience rather than just, I would do this, I would do that. And it's exactly what you described. You know, if you've got an experience, you've had a similar problem that you've overcome, then they want you then to share that. Hello and welcome to the Business Growth Show.
I'm John from Octopus Computers.
And I'm Adam from Active Internet Marketing.
This is the show where we sit down with business owners, founders and entrepreneurs from Stamford and the Greater Rutland area.
We discuss their journey, look at their wins and their challenges, and get practical advice that you can apply.
New episodes come out fortnightly, so if you want to stay up to date, drop us a follow or subscribe wherever you're listening.
Good morning, Pete.
Morning, how are we doing?
I'm very well. Thanks so much for joining us
I appreciate it.
This morning. Really excited to hear from you. Obviously, you and I have known each other for a little while, but we've not been able to catch up. So I'm really intrigued to find out a lot more about what you've got going on at the moment. First of all, if you could just introduce yourself, your business, just give us a bit of an oversight of yourself, really.
Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. So my name's Pete Rushmore, and as you know already, to be fair, and I've got three core businesses that I run. The oldest and biggest business is called Flagship Partners, and we're what I class really as a boutique agency that focus on consultancy and training predominantly for fleet operators. Some of our customers aren't fleet operators. We do more generic training things like first aid and health and safety training, but predominantly the focus is around fleets of vehicles that run operators licenses is kind of our real niche. And what we do with those clients is we support them to be, our goal is to support them to be safer, greener and greater. So we focus on their operator license, their health and safety, even their employment law, and my consultants and team sort of support them across their businesses generally. On top of that, I have It's Not So Lonely at the top, which is like my leadership development program. One of the things I realized was with a lot of the clients we were working with, some of their compliance issues were related to lack of leadership knowledge and understanding. Compliance and safety is really driven from the top of an organization. So just seeing that there's a gap and an opportunity to develop good communication skills, good practice, that kind of thing, I thought was really important. So It's Not So Lonely at the top focuses on that. And then the third is really my personal brand. So I've recently published a book, The Performance Trifecta. I've done a TEDx talk. I do industry speaking events and those kinds of things.
Excellent. Perhaps you could tell us a bit more about your book then to start off.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, cool. So The Performance Trifecta was really my manifesto on how I believe that leaders can maximize high performance in their organizations. And there's a couple of three key focus areas, three key sort of levers that I think are most important. And generally speaking, they are direction, skills, and energy. Now, direction is around making sure that we set standards, set precedents as leaders, make sure we set a clear goal, as well as vision, values, what the mission is of the organization, those kinds of things. It's really, really important to set our stall out around where we're heading. And then the next one is around skills. So that's just around essentially making sure that people in the team have the skill sets necessary to be able to enable that success. And that doesn't just mean, so in the organizations we work with, a lot of them will invest in mandatory training, health and safety training, first aid, those kinds of things. But it's about going, well, how are you making sure people are gelling as a team? How do you make sure they've got the sufficient communication skills? How do we set standards around leadership development? Are we just making managers, or are we actually teaching them to be good managers? So it's about that investment in skills. And then the third piece is around the energy, which I think is kind of often the missing piece. So how do we properly motivate people? How do we actually energize them around being able to deliver the very best for their people and for themselves as well. So one of the tools I use in my leadership development toolkit is something called motivational maps. And what that is it's a survey that someone does at any given time, and it will provide them with what their top motivators are. So most people think people are motivated by money, and many people are. Many people are. It is one of 9 motivators, but usually we're all a mishmash of all 9 motivators, but we normally have 2 or 3 that are most important to us. So money might be one of them. It might be meaning and purpose. It might be freedom and autonomy. It might be creativity and innovation, those kinds of things. So once we understand what those motivations are for people, we can really tailor the work experience to make sure that we get the very best out of them.
Brilliant. Sounds excellent. Yeah, really, really good.
Do you think it's energy that's missing most in the leaders you work with, or is it always a blend of all 3?
No, 100%. So the data states, this was my TEDx talk, was the data states that $9 trillion globally is lost each year due to lack of engagement at work.
Wow.
So it's a major problem for all organisations that actually engage in people and getting them to be properly motivated at work is a major issue globally. The stat I use in the TEDx talk is that, yes, that's a global figure, but to put it into context, Apple's worth 3 trillion, right? So each year, the Gallup, who are the researchers that provide that statistic, it's just huge. It's astronomical. So I think it's a real challenge for leaders to reflect on how best their little corner of their world, how best they can motivate people to get the best out of them.
Yeah, it's really good.
Is that normally because they try and treat everyone the same? Like you say, just assume everyone is motivated by money. So to get the most, everyone's on commission.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, we're never taught the language of motivation as leaders. A lot of leaders don't understand what motivation is. Particularly, so let's take small business owners, for example. Generally speaking, and I'm generalizing hugely here, but if I started talking to you guys as entrepreneurs about freedom and autonomy, making decent money and having meaning and purpose in your work, I'm starting to talk your language. But that's the profile, that's the motivational profile of an entrepreneur. The people working for you aren't entrepreneurs. They want stability and security. They want training and investment. You can start to see different profiles come through when you do the maps with different people. So what happens is leaders often make the mistake of motivating people the same way that they're motivated, because that's what we see.
I guess you can end up in quite a conflict if you're trying to push people down the wrong motivational routes. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, sorry to cut you off. Sorry, but yeah, absolutely. So I just get really excited because because the map shows us what least motivates people. So a really good example of that is one of the motivators is what we call the star profile. So the star is people who thrive on recognition. They're competitive. They like to be seen as the best people in the office or the go-to person, or if you're running an employee of the month program, they're the ones who really want to win it. Well, some people are really turned off by that. So I'll often get asked, particularly, should we run an employee of the month program? And I'm like, well, let's see how many stars you've got in your team, because actually some people could be really switched off by having that spotlight on them. The people with really low star motivator, they would be sat on camera here with a microphone in front of them. They're going to be a nervous wreck, because it's just not how they're energized. They don't want to be that center of attention.
So do you reckon the whole organization should be mapped so that people can find the right motivators for each department?
It's the most effective way. I usually start by mapping the leader and helping them understand themselves, and then starting to look at their team. And part of the process is you can create a team map and departmental maps as well. So what that does is it gives you a real inclination of how different teams. Say you're in a bigger business, you've got different teams. If you've got a health, for example, I employ health and safety specialists, compliance type people. So they'll have certain preferences. I'll lead them in certain ways. Those people are generally speaking, are most motivated by things like their CPD. How are they being seen as the go-to expert? How are we developing them? Are we making sure they're getting the knowledge around cutting edge incidents that have occurred and gaining the knowledge from that, so they feel like they're really empowered from a knowledge perspective? Those things are often very important to those people.
And the way you described it and the information that's in it, I guess you could apply that then to large corporate businesses down to a single entrepreneur, and everything in between could benefit from adopting that information.
Yeah, and that was the power of writing the book. Really, was that I felt that it transcended the size of and scope of the business. I've written it really simply, short chapters, and I've written it as a book for non-book readers, I suppose. Probably because my English isn't the best myself, but also because I wanted a lot of the leaders I work with often wouldn't be the people who go and read, Simon Sinek or Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, that kind of thing. So I wanted to make it really accessible for people as well.
Yeah, great.
How did you get into that? How did you get into that level of leadership training?
So it's a really good question. So it started with me. So I realized that when I founded Flagship originally in 2018, I was building a business that reflected where I was. And I soon learned, reading books myself and focusing on my own personal development, that if I wanted to develop a business that worked really well for me, I needed to then develop myself to make sure I reflected. So the example I give is COVID hit. And I know that people always talk about COVID as a traumatic time, but it was seriously traumatic, right? And I really hit burnout. I think what my definition of success looked like was the Lamborghini, the supercar, the mansion, those kinds of things. And I was really burning myself out working towards it. So I went on a journey myself of getting, I had been going for business coaching, but I ended up going for a personal development coach. So I was really focusing on what it was I wanted. And that was where I then discovered motivational mapping. I realized that I am motivated financially, so I did want to build a business that was profitable. But also, the most interesting one was actually my director, my director profile. So that motivator for director is people who like to be in control, make decisions. They like to have control over people and resources. Really good for somebody who wants to run an organization. Really bad for me because I don't have it. It doesn't interest me. I'm not bothered about being in charge. I don't want to be the boss. But I am motivated by freedom and autonomy and money. So what I realized was actually, I don't want to build a big business. I want to build multiple small businesses that are really nimble, that are really agile, that create me freedom and flexibility.
Sounds like you
really pivoted.
Sounds like you discovered you were an entrepreneur during COVID.
Essentially, yeah. I think I realized that I needed to lean into it because the intention had always been to just grow and build and build and build and build the organization. And as it was growing, I realized that actually that isn't me, that isn't what I wanted. So yeah.
And what you just described, I think, such a familiar story for so many entrepreneurs. They kind of feel that a certain set of objectives is motivating them, and a lot of them are material, like you described, and then perhaps they get quite a long way along the journey, and then they find out very fast and sharp that that's not exactly where they want to head. So yeah, so some really valuable stuff in there, it sounds Appreciate like that. And again, could benefit people from a small one-person business right up to a corporate business. So are you're taking that out and you're offering that to organizations then?
Yeah, so it's part of that model is something that I use regularly with organizations. So what happens is that my work tends to go through Flagship. We'll get into organizations, and then I tend to build a relationship with whoever my client is, and I will start to explore this stuff with them. What are they doing around this side? And I think they come to us usually because something traumatic's happened, usually based on compliance and those kinds of things. A wheel's maybe fallen off, or there's been, God forbid, a fatality or a near miss of something significant. And then I tend to we focus on the things that are on the face value, but what I realized is they're usually symptoms of a root cause. And actually we need to get to the root cause and start to do those things. So I recently launched a mastermind group for some of my clients who are business owners, and the reason it's called It's Not So Lonely at the top is it can feel quite lonely sometimes. Definitely. And I think that it's really important to build communities of entrepreneurs and leaders, business owners together, because when you're facing a lot of the responsibilities that you face for people and for your teams, it's not generally what I found is a lot of mastermind groups tend to focus on business growth, which is really good. But again, I've benefited so much from personal growth. So my focus is we do the business piece and the skills around that, but the real focus often is actually more on the personal side of the growth.
And how do you get people to sort of get past that stiff upper lip approach of everything's fine and sunshine and rainbows? And no, I don't need any personal coaching. I'm perfectly great. Because I think that's often how people portray themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So I tend to try and essentially model vulnerability first, which is an approach I've often taken when I talk about mental health, when I talk about the things that I've had going on. If I model that, if I go first with, I think that's demonstrating leadership. So I go first with some of the challenges I've faced and model the vulnerability. And then that people tend to just open up a bit more when you show that there's no judgment. I find it more frustrating that people tell me they're shitting rainbows when they're not, and it's obvious they're not. The map's really interesting, just reverting back to it, because not only does it tell you how people are motivated, but it also tells you how well motivated they are. So it gives you a satisfaction score. So the other benefit is like I could map you guys, and if there was something, there's no, as long as you've answered those questions honestly, there's no hiding. I'll see that you're 60-70% motivated and there's something wrong, and I'll see what motivator it is that's causing it. So I might see that there's some level of conflict potentially there, and it opens a really good conversation to go, okay, so maybe the financial side's not as good as it could be, or maybe often it's the lack of freedom. Normally, often it's like a lack of freedom. It's a feeling of feeling trapped. So it's like, what's really important, I think, for anyone is that they feel really aligned with their work. I think that's where joy and happiness come from.
So when you first came in and you mentioned I've got 3 businesses, one of my questions is going to be, well, which do you enjoy the most? But before we get on to that, they're so complementary, aren't they? I think when you win a new client, there's such a depth of knowledge and experience that you can offer them that will benefit them across so many different areas. You can make a huge impact to what they're doing. Is it hard for you sometimes to span your time and energy across those 3, or coming back to your motivation, I guess, which areas do you enjoy the most of it?
It's a really good question, and it's challenging because I suppose I like to punch above my weight as best I can. So I work really hard. But I love it. I'm very purpose driven. So I often see it's about having that positive impact. It's about seeing the gains that other people are having. I get really, excited by that. And that's really what keeps me going. And obviously I've got a really good team at Flagship, because a lot of the heavy lifting they're doing, I'm really only a leader in that sense. So the team are doing so much good work there. But again, Flagship, whilst I don't tend to do the day-to-day work in the organisation, because I feel that writing risk assessments and writing policies and that level of training, I've sort of transcended that. The team are so committed to it, and again, when I know I'm motivated by meaning and purpose, and 5 people a day die on UK roads unnecessarily, and 50% of those people are driving for work. So there's a huge bit of impact that organisation can have as Flagship to really improve road safety, to really improve the standards there. So I focus on that big picture.
I hope you're enjoying today's episode. Please remember to like, give us a rating, give us a follow and subscribe wherever you're listening if you're enjoying the show.
And I know you're really motivated by your family as well. You've got quite a young family and stuff. Tell us a little bit about your personal life and some of that area and your history and how you got to being so successful today.
I appreciate that. So obviously my family are a big part of that. I've got Maggie, my wife. We've been married for I better get this right. just over 13 years.
Congratulations.
I appreciate that. So she's really supportive. Obviously, she's co-director in the business as well. But she's really supportive. She does an amazing job at home with the family. We've got 4 children between us. So Shannon, my stepdaughter, is at university. She studies at Exeter. doing medical sciences. She obviously didn't. Obviously, she's not my actual daughter, which is why she's got brains. And then my three, Lolly, Roman, and Tallulah, they're all at secondary school now. It's like flying by, but we had them quite close together. And they're amazing. I spend my weekends generally taxiing them around to football and cheerleading and all the different stuff. But it was one of the reasons that was a real driver for me when I left corporate to set up as an entrepreneur was them, and not so much that I wanted to build them a legacy, but I wanted them to demonstrate to them. I'd always felt so suffocated because I know I'm motivated by freedom and autonomy. You don't really get that in corporate.
No.
And I wanted to demonstrate to them that they could really do whatever they wanted to do, but also potentially that if I had agile enough businesses, I could support them in going on their own entrepreneurial journey and having their own impact on what was important to them. So, we're already, like, Lolly's 14 and she's already, we talked to her about what first aid training might look like for her when she's old enough and those kinds of things. So,
what a fantastic thing that you can do that and set up a path for them in advance of them being at an age to take advantage of it, and start to talk to them about that now as well.
Yeah, and it's also realising that you might need to pivot, or it might need to be a slightly different business for them based on their needs, because one of the things that I see regularly in the work I do is like a second generation of business owner who comes into a business where they feel like they've got to follow the path that was set out by their parents, and there's a level of responsibility because family wealth's being built, and I've not got that weight myself. My dad was a policeman, but that must weigh really heavy for those guys who are going in, or guys and girls, who are going in as second generation or third generation, even, like this responsibility from a family ties perspective to, this is the way the business does things and this is how we go.
It's tough. My IT company
really
is a second generation. So my dad started it and then I took it on, and it is challenging because you do go up against, we're the modern way. I've learned different things to how you've run the business, and now we need to change it. How do you find that maps against the motivational shift as well for the whole organization? Because my motivators are certainly different to my father's as different generations. Do you see that comes in?
Yeah, it does. It absolutely comes in. And also, and that can really create conflict, I think, as well. So often I find the challenges is that the parents might step away or claim they're stepping away and still micromanage in the background, particularly if they've got a high director motivator. But the benefit of the mapping as an example is that you can start to address these things head on, because actually if you had a parent, for example, who's still running the business in the background, then you can see that they're a director, there is a tendency potentially to micromanage and to really try and influence things still. So you'd be able to just be quite direct in that conversation. Whereas if you don't have those tools, it can maybe start to feel a bit like you're criticizing people, for example. So, which obviously you want to avoid, don't you? You want to avoid criticism. So. But yeah, I see it regularly, particularly, we work with a lot of high capital expenditure type businesses that run fleets, for example. So they're not the sort of businesses you just go and start up overnight. They're businesses that have been around for a little while, and have taken time to grow and invest and those kinds of things. So they're not the sort of businesses you just walk away from either. So you find a middle way. You find the way. There's always an equanimity. There's a okay, your position's here, and the person taking on the business is here. How do we find that middle way and do the negotiating?
Brilliant. And everything you described, you've really found a unique way of adding value to the people that are your clients in a established sort of framework, but adding a lot of value to them. Tell us a bit more about your mastermind group and what you're doing there that stands out or is different.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So a lot of business growth type masterminds out there, and I've been through several as an entrepreneur myself, and there's a couple of ways that I think the way I do it is really powerful. The first is that when you run mastermind groups, what tends to happen is you have a room full of quite outgoing, confident type people, and the business owner is encouraged to share a challenge that they're facing. And what tends to happen is advice. Okay. And one of the things I'm really strict on is that the group ask questions, because generally speaking, the problem that's presented is not the root problem. And actually the power is in the quality of the questions you can ask. Well, what's causing this issue? And, how do you know that it's an issue? And those kinds of things. And what ends up starting with one thing ends up being another challenge. And the group have helped to uncover that. And then when you find the real, rather than trying to fix symptoms, you're fixing a root cause. And the benefit of that is then you get real insights, because everyone has got similar challenges. I love a peer mentoring system, because it's so powerful to hear. Business transcends industry, and it's about people, it's about teams, it's about principles, about morals, those kinds of things. So when people share their experiences, that can be really powerful and unlock different thinking. So that's one of the ways I do it slightly differently. The other is that I don't position as myself as the expert in the group. I'm only there as a facilitator. I get amazing speakers in. So I'm part of the Professional Speakers Association, which is the PSA. And I find the very best educators in their field to come and support the group. So we have, this year we've had speakers like Nigel Risner. He talks about culture. He talks about, he calls himself the chief zookeeper. He's written a book about different animal profiles that people can be. Very interesting, the impact code. So he's got a few different frameworks which are really interesting. He's a fantastic speaker, and the group went away with loads of learnings. And we also had a speaker called Dr. Dave Hall, who actually used to work in Newmarket in drug testing for the horses. So he learned a lot about performance and those kinds of things, but he actually studied and talks about creativity and innovation. And he does a fantastic workshop around how to encourage creative thinking. He says generally most companies call themselves creative and innovative, and at best they're just continuous improvement. They're never actually being that creative. They're just improving the world, what he calls the world of what is. So generally speaking, we think of things in the conceptual way that we experience them, and he tries to get us to transcend real outside of the box thinking. So it's fantastic. And yeah, we get those speakers in, they're brilliant.
It's really interesting what you say there, because I'm in a peer group as well, and you have to be a multi-million-pound business to join. It's kind of invite. It's quite a big financial commitment to join initially. And it was really interesting what you said about lots of people want to give advice.
Yeah.
And very much in our group, it's stop. We're not here for advice, which is essentially from opinion. You're only allowed to share from experience, rather than just, I would do this, I would do that. And it's exactly what you described. If you've got an experience, you've had a similar problem that you've overcome, then they want you then to share that. And it's great that I find it really beneficial, because you can take other people's learnings directly from a similar experience, rather than just advice that can be spouted from lots of people. So it sounds like a really good group that you got there, definitely.
Appreciate that.
What would you say is the biggest challenge you've had to overcome to get to where you are today? I think when I first met you, a lot of the things you've spoken about, you were aspiring to get to, and now a couple of years down the line, you're actually doing them. So that's fantastic. So all of your hard effort and hard work's come to fruition, which is fantastic to see. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges you've overcome?
I think it's a really good question. I think there's always, when you build a business, there's always like the straightforward stuff like cash flow and profitability and making the right hires. I've kissed a few frogs in my time. I shan't mention names, but it's hard. That people side of stuff's really hard, because you need a team of people to help facilitate the growth. My biggest challenge, I think, has probably been my own development, but I think it's been the most rewarding. I really, like I said, I nearly burnt out to start with. So it's just kind of finding that energy balance, as it's hard work, and you have to really focus on that growth. I had a particular challenge around guilt often share that. So I really struggled with guilt when I was first starting out, and the guilt was always, I was working really hard and I felt guilty I wasn't with the family, and then I spend time off and time with the family relaxing, and then I feel guilty that I wasn't working in the business, because the boundaries end up getting really blurred. And I think that was the biggest thing to overcome, was to create structure around when I was going to say yes and when I was going to say no, and the things I said no to. Because I did a podcast on it recently, but sometimes every time we say, what we don't realize is when we say yes to something, we're saying no to something else. And that energy, that knowing what we're going to say yes to, we have to be really careful. And as business owners, as entrepreneurs, people pleasing is actually it can become really transparent that you're a people pleaser, and that could be really challenging, because the opposite of a people pleaser is someone who doesn't give a fuck about anyone else as well. So you got to find a middle ground, right? Sorry, sorry, bleep that out.
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
But it's true, isn't it? Right. Yeah. So you got to find a middle ground, because if you end up saying yes to everything, you just end up stretched and spread too thin.
I think there is this belief as well that saying no makes you negative in some way, or that kind of thing, and that's not. Having boundaries can still be a positive, healthy thing.
Absolutely. So, and that is one of the things that often leaders need most. When I'm coaching with leaders and supporting leaders, that sometimes they need most support with, because you grow and develop by saying yes. And a lot of businesses have that attitude, particularly with customers as well, right? The answer is yes. What's the question, right? Let's crack on. We'll do everything we can. Finding boundaries is a big challenge, and it's personal. That's. Adam would be, John, you'd be, I'd be, we all have our own boundaries, and we have to be transparent about what they are.
So what advice would you give to entrepreneurs and founders who are looking to grow and scale and effectively pursue their dreams like you have?
Great question. What would my advice be? My advice would be read the Performance Trifecta.
Good plug.
Really, really like shameless plug there. I really think it's important to start with our motivation and understand how we're motivated, and then developing ourselves and our own energy and building a business that really plugs into what most motivates us. So if we like having a team of people and we want people around us and those kinds of things, then let's create a business that focuses on that. If we're a lone ranger, just maximize that, right? How can you maximize your income and profitability on your own if you're not interested in working with other people? How do you build a business that way? What tends to happen when people start businesses is they go, right, I've got work experience doing this.
Yeah.
Whether they're miserable, happy, or indifferent, I've got experience doing this, so I'm going to sell this. And I just think there's, we're in the 21st century. There's more exciting ways to do things.
You do come across those, what I would call accidental business owners, where particularly if it's trade or skill based, they've got something, they've left a job because they were unhappy, thought, well, I'll go do it myself, self-employed, and it just gets out of hand. Sure. Before they know it, they are running a business and there's a team, and it's never what they truly wanted. Sure. Is there a way to break out of that? Is it a hard restructure based on motivators, or are there different tools they could use?
Yeah, I think it can be hard. Yeah, yeah, it can be hard, and it can be so unique to different people depending on how they operate. But I'm also a big advocate for everything is as it's meant to be, right? So when people face challenges, like it's always about overcoming them, isn't it? And being shaped by them. So my belief is that everything is as it should be. So when we find something with challenges, that we just need to lean into them. The obstacle's the way. Stoic philosophy coming out. But
great book as well.
Yeah, great book. Yeah, Ryan Holiday. So I'm a big fanboy for Ryan Holiday, and I use a lot of his thinking in the way I approach things.
Excellent. And I know you've got some exciting stuff that you're planning for the future, Pete, as well. Can you tell us a bit more about what's coming up for each of the businesses? And I know you're working on some other projects as well.
Appreciate that. Yeah. So Flagship is and will continue to do the things it's doing. We're developing some really cool software at the moment. So one of the things that I realised were around wanting to build smaller businesses, it helps you really understand what it is you're building. And actually, my goal isn't to really grow that team. The team at Flagship we've developed recently, one of the biggest challenges that we deal with is actually communicating with drivers. So a lot of our companies have remote workers who are not about all the time. From a compliance perspective, they need them to have read the policy documentation, risk assessments, and signed for them. So we've created an app to do that. We've also created a membership platform. Tim from Project Rising has helped support us to build an AI advice software, which is building again, it can increase our reach from a customer perspective through membership. So lots of exciting stuff going there through building through tech. It's not solely at the top. I want to grow the mastermind group. I want to have multiple groups eventually. So the more people interested in that, the better. And to sort of geographically spread that. So at the moment, it's hosted at Mulsey Mill, which is in Deeping, quite near to where we're recording this. And one of the ways that I'm looking to grow that is on the 21st of November this year, I'm running the Director's Edge 2026, which is essentially a growth event for business leaders to come along and spend the day with other business owners. I'm aiming to get about 60 people in the room at the Crown Lodge in Outwell. And I've got some amazing speakers. I actually mentioned two of them. So they're people that have spoken for the Mastermind Group this year and stood out as standout speakers. So Dr. Dave Hall and Nigel Risner are coming. And the ticket price is really accessible, much more accessible than a Mastermind Group, but essentially as a taster to realise what the impact and power can be of developing ourselves in those ways. So yeah, the Director's Edge is on the 21st of November. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then next year I'm looking to do more. I want to do more speaking. There's probably another book in me. There is another framework I use, which lands actually on Stoic philosophy. Is based on some of the learnings I've had from that, which is one of the things that companies often struggle with is how do they shape their culture. And it's a book about how we shape culture in teams. So it's called the Hero Framework. It's a framework I use with companies to create their culture.
Brilliant. That'd be really interesting. I know from a lot of entrepreneurs that I come into contact with and conversations, and kind of alludes back to what we were talking about earlier, as they grow their business, they're taking on more staff and getting some success, then trying to get the right culture throughout that business can be quite a challenge as well. And it's something that often I think comes a bit later down the journey as well, and they're trying to almost retrofit or reinstall it. Yeah. So I think that would be a huge benefit for people as well.
Awesome.
And you mentioned about the event on the 21st of November. If people have got some interest in that after seeing the video, is it best to send you a message on LinkedIn or?
Yeah, absolutely. So people can drop me a message. There is a link for the event, which
we can share that.
If you can share that in the show notes. So I've got a link for a landing page for the event. It's like I say, it's at the Outwell Crown Lodge Hotel, which is a lovely independent boutique hotel. It's not far from here for sure. Certainly within an hour. And it's going to be a really great day of like local businesses getting together and thinking. The challenge we've got is that we're on top of another budget, aren't we? And everyone feels very uncertain about what's coming. I always try not to time podcasts so much, but because they tend to not age very well in that sense. But we are in a time of real uncertainty, and everyone's being squeezed at the moment. And a lot of people there's interest in doing business out there, but actually everyone's really quite reticent to actually do anything different and everyone's focusing on costs and those kinds of things. So it's not an ideal environment. And this event will be around, well, how do we, just because the economy's bad, just because the politics are bad, it doesn't mean that my business can't be bad. How do we take control and make 2026 the best it could be?
Definitely. I think, a lot of what you've spoken about and the knowledge that you've got that you're sharing with people, a lot of those principles that sit behind that are timeless. So I think actually it's probably never a better time for people to really work on the foundation of what's motivating them, the techniques that they apply to get success. So actually probably a better time than any to get right back to fundamentals and apply those things. Definitely.
Appreciate that.
And where can people go to find out more about you, about Flagship and all the other projects you're involved in?
Yeah, appreciate that. So Follow me on LinkedIn, I think is probably the best way. Yeah, so follow me on LinkedIn. Flagship Partners is out there. We've got our website, and it's not so lonely at the top. I shorten because it's a bit of a mouthful to INSLAT. So yeah, INSLAT, and then yeah, just follow me on LinkedIn, and hopefully people will come across my work.
Awesome.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Pete. Really appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
That wraps up another episode of the Business Growth Show. Thanks for joining us.
We hope it gave you some ideas or inspiration that you can take away and use in your own business.
Don't forget to drop us a like, a follow, and a rating, and hopefully we'll see you soon for the next episode.